thank you everybody for joining us today. I am very pleased to have our partners from the great state of New York with us today to talk about AI in the public sector, especially our Workforce Exchange product, which is really only mostly relevant to public sector. So it's really great to be able to talk about some of the outcomes and the impact that Workforce Exchange is having in the state of New York, amongst other states. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my esteemed panel here today. And Chris, we'll start with you. If you can give us a little bit about your background and what you do with the state of New York.
Sure. So I run the Workforce Development Division of the New York State Department of Labor. So we oversee about 95 or so, I say about because every day it changes just a little bit, but we oversee 95 career centers all across the state. And our primary goal is connecting job seekers to jobs and connecting businesses to job seekers. Really what that amounts to is staff of about 1,000 people across the state, just in my division. The agency is much larger, which Scott will talk about. But really helping people, in many cases, one-to-one, in person, having very intimate conversations during really challenging times in someone's life, and helping them really see a path forward for them. But then also flipping to businesses, helping businesses in a really challenging environment. We all know, right? We've been listening to this entire conference about the challenges businesses are facing, and we're, again, helping them one-on-one to overcome a lot of these very real barriers that are out there in trying to help themselves grow in the economy and succeed on a lot of levels. The numbers, of the folks that we're serving last year, we set a new record. We served 1.1 million people across our state, which is amazing. Considering just the scale of need out there certainly speaks to it. But I think also our scale of kind of the ability that we have to provide services. And then for businesses, every year we work with about 25,000 businesses. So really kind of trying to be that middle ground, between the supply and the demand in New York State.
Great. Scott?
He said everything that there is to say. Thanks, Chris. My name's Scott Melvin. I'm the number 2 at the New York State Department of Labor. We're about 3,400 employees, about a $10 billion budget. We have a large footprint over the state, as Chris talked about. We have 3 main programs that we run. Chris talked about our workforce development program, gives you a good sense of it. We have our unemployment insurance program, which most of you are familiar with. On what side of the coin, it depends, which is a large presence also. It's about 1,200 people in that space. And then we do worker protection for New York State, which is we have a whole bunch of labor relations type laws that we cover in the state. Do all sorts of enforcement activities, and that is kind of the soup to nuts of what it is. During the pre-pandemic, we had many initiatives and things that we wanted to do technology-wise. Globally speaking, we were 95% paper-based pre-pandemic, which was all sorts of problems, as you can imagine. And one of the great advantages of the pandemic, if there was any, there were not many, but was that it allowed us to do technology and talk about technology and implement technology. Just to give you some sense, during the pandemic, for the 2.5 years or so that it existed, we serviced about 5.5 million people and distributed about $105 billion in benefits. So the scale is insane, right? But it is New York, right? So of course it is larger than anything else, not as large as California. But we have a little bit of competition. But that kind of sets the stage for why AI is interesting and important to us.
Well, I'd like to sort of double click on that a little bit, because I think, especially at this audience, they might not know the existing systems that were in place and some of the processes and some of the tools and services that were available to job seekers pre-AI. So in the attempt to level set, can you share with us sort of the old way of how you helped job seekers find employment and connect them with employers?
Yeah.
They gave you their pen and piece of paper.
Yeah, exactly. When I go back in time.
That's basically what we did.
Yep, no, very true. By the way, Scott is my boss, so if you see me sweating, it's just... So no, pre-pandemic, I mean, it feels like a lifetime ago, and then every time I think about, what the pandemic was like, I have this like visceral, horrible reaction. But we learned a lot, and we learned that, the way we were doing things, the mission hasn't changed, but the way we needed to be doing things needed to be very, very different. What do I mean? So we used to, as the primary start for the folks we work with, send them a letter when they, about, say like 70, 80% of folks who we were serving were claiming unemployment insurance. So they had lost their job and they needed, as part of a requirement, to come into one of our centers.
And a letter, not an email.
Literally a letter.
Not an email,
Yes.
a letter.
Physical letter.
To be very specific.
Yes. So they got a letter saying you need to come in person. So they would come in. You can imagine they were not happy because we don't provide transportation coverage. So they had to get there, and that cost gas money or public transit money. They had to park, which also cost money.
And by the way, they came in because if they didn't come in, we'd shut their benefit off.
Correct.
So go ahead.
So so they're not happy walking in the door.
Correct.
We would then sit them down with a counselor who had any version of training. They hopefully knew what they should have known and kind of were held to some level of standards. We had and still have kind of a main case management system, which is like Oracle database dating back to 19. Not exaggerating. The counselor would bring up this antiquated case management system. They'd ask them a bunch of very probing questions, make the person feel like they were very low, and say oh, what do you want to do? Just really help, try to help that person understand what options and opportunities were for them. But the main limitation, I think, at that time, and everybody kind of knew it, was the only kind of sense of expertise that person had. And by the way, a lot of these are career counselors. They've been doing this for decades. And in many cases, they're really, really good at what they do, and they know a lot. But they don't know a lot because you're very limited in what you can learn as a human being. When the entire economy is changing, when the job market is changing at the quickening pace that we all know it is. So their expertise, while good, was very, very small. So they were able to guide people, based on their own expertise to potential career paths, and that was kind of the extent of the experience.
Well, so pre-pandemic, the stat for a displaced worker finding reemployment was approximately 23 weeks. I think we now know why, right? This process was really burdensome. It was difficult to navigate. The career counselors, it would be difficult for them to also effectuate the process. Can we talk a little bit now? You're in the pandemic world. You know that you have this big challenge that you're trying to solve. What were some of the steps that you took, and why artificial intelligence as a way to sort of ameliorate some of those concerns?
Yeah, we didn't have a choice. That, I think, is the fundamental underpinning of why we had to make decisions the way we made decisions.
And just, can I interrupt on that for 1 second? The interesting thing, too, is Chris and I, probably more so than anybody at the agency, believe in the technology side of things, right? And we were not in a position of authority pre-pandemic. So it's an interesting journey also for us of being able to take advantage of the situation, be able to say, look, we're just doing this.
Impending event.
And
yeah. And very candidly, Dan was actually one of the people he presented in late 2019.
Yeah, right.
We had a couple presentations.
Yeah.
And my first, this is not a sales pitch for Eightfold, but my first impression was this is too good for us.
Yeah.
Quite literally, I didn't
No
see
joke.
dollars and cents.
Absolutely
this is too good
no
for
joke.
us. Yeah.
Yes.
It wasn't
No
even
joke.
we're never gonna be able to afford this in a million years,
Yeah.
let alone actually help people.
Yeah.
So pandemic hits, right?
The world goes to an
World.
end. Let me say one more thing about that too, is all of the 3,400 staff that we had, 3,300 staff, switched over to doing unemployment insurance, right? So that concept of the customer, meeting a customer where they were, which Chris's staff did really well pre-pandemic, did better than other parts of the agency. They were in a space to learn and exposed to what customers were experiencing when they came in for UI. So go ahead.
So now we have millions of people sitting on the sidelines and this tremendous opportunity for reskilling, upskilling, let alone the actual need for upskilling and reskilling, but no tools to effectuate, no tools to actually pull it off. So I wish I could say we were sitting around. It was one of those like, panic dream moments of like, we gotta do something.
Not even a fever dream.
And then not even a fever dream.
No.
We then were recalling the really positive experiences that we had. And we're like, maybe we should give this eightfold thing another try and like actually go back and see, like, kick the tires a little bit and be real about it. But we didn't have a choice. We had to do something because the scale, like I said, we have a team of 1,000. We have millions and millions of job seekers. Those two numbers do not compute. So you have to have some kind of system to leverage. I think what we also realized, and we knew for a while, but again, didn't have the tools to actually be able to do it, not everybody needs us. There's a segment of people out there, and it's probably pretty big, who don't need to come into a center, who don't need to meet with a career counselor. Or they don't need the 3-hour
Varying
experience.
degrees.
Exactly.
Totally, varying degrees of service.
And our system never accommodated or accounted for that. It was all or nothing. And really what we needed was a system that could scale. Really what we needed is a system that allowed people to, like Scott said, to meet the customer where they are. And to really acknowledge that, that not everyone is the same. We know this, but the multi-dimensionality that every single person brings to the table is, I think, just something that we continue to think about more and more, and that the expertise of our counselors really can be put to better use if we're being more efficient with their time, focusing on the people who really need their help more than others.
Yeah, I love that theme of doing more with less and making them more effective. And I also like what you're talking about is enabling self-service, right? For those that want to be able to go out and find their own job and take charge and do it themselves, like making sure that you create the least friction in that process. And so, and I think when we had talked, the previous system really required a job seeker to type in a keyword, which presupposed that they know what they're looking for. Then they get thousands of job opportunities with vaguely worded job descriptions. And we all know that job descriptions are a poor articulation of need. And so what that means is that a job seeker then has to self-assess and interpret based off of that vaguely worded job description. Most of the time they get that wrong.
Added on top of the stress of they need a job.
The clock's ticking.
They have to pay rent.
Yeah.
They have to feed their family. Right. There's all these other things going on.
So I'm wondering, and Scott, if you can talk a little bit now about that experience for a job seeker when they're coming in and it's now profile-based and aligned to their skills and potential.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'd be interested to hear what you have to say to this too. Chris and I frequently have varying degrees of opinions on things. Mostly.
One of us is right, one
mostly
of us
different. One of us is right and one of us is wrong. This idea that if they come in, right? If they come in, it's generally because everybody else has been taken care of already, right? And we're able to kind of address the people who need the most attention, right? And the low-hanging fruit, to some extent, right, get addressed and taken care of relatively quickly. And it allows staff to focus on the needed community, not that everybody doesn't need, but the more needs. And generally, people who have barriers to employment, it takes a lot of work to get through those barriers.
Yeah.
So the low-hanging fruit and the people who can easily get into something or say, like, there are these 5 matches that they have, let's apply for them, and then they'll probably get one, right? It's the larger need piece that is the problem, and it makes it easier for customers to be met in that particular space.
That's fantastic. And Chris, when we sat down not too long ago, we were talking about this notion of matching individuals and allowing individuals to be considered based off of potential. All too often, an individual is really kind of looked at only based off of what they have done before in the past, which just kind of keeps them at that same level. And so how is artificial intelligence really unlocking an individual's potential to allow them to be considered for these next roles? And what is the impact on, say, family-sustaining wages in that process?
I think for the average customer, and it's not just thinking, it's hearing from them, because we do talk to our customers a lot, it's almost a level of disbelief. One, that we as a government can actually have a tool that is as modern, as sophisticated as, it's almost seemingly unbelievable that this tool exists and that government's doing this. Because look, not all of our centers are as modern as you can imagine. So you walk in government-y, right?
Right.
And then you log in, you're like, oh, what is this? This is real?
Yeah.
I think really what it helps ultimately, though, is it helps individuals see in themselves pathways and opportunities that otherwise they never would have that ability to see in themselves. For me, that is the fundamental thing that we do. It's the fundamental key to someone's success. And if we can have tools that supplement what our career counselors are really good at, and can help people kind of change their entry point. The folks that we're serving, the breadth of experience, the breadth of kind of expertise, the breadth of the starting point for where folks are coming in the door has never been as wide as it is today. And for someone to be able to even use this tool, and then the narrative changes for a career counselor. So they're walking in and they're saying, hey, I used this tool. I never thought of myself as X, Y, Z. Or, okay, so the tool recommended that I need some training in X, Y, Z. What do I do? How do I get it? Let's talk through that. It changes the starting point of that conversation. You're still going to have someone who comes in the door, digitally illiterate, has no ideas. That's a different starting point, different conversation. They'll get there, but they're not there now. But for so many other people, they're so far through that spectrum that we can really start serving them way more effectively. And I think for to answer your question,
No, finish.
I think it's a real game changer for someone to really have hope, to have that sense of opportunity that they never otherwise would have. That's the reason I got into government. It's why I got into public service. I never thought I'd be here this long, but
I didn't think you would be.
Yeah, I could say the same, but you're my boss. But I think that is really the core of our mission, and it helps us execute in a way that like I said, I never thought we'd be able to do.
Can I add two things?
Please.
To that? It's interesting too because it also allows, depending on the skill level of our staff, depending on how we trained them, which was not well pre-pandemic, people got varying degrees of service in terms of what other careers they might be available for based on their skill.
Yeah.
Right? So this is an instant tool that set our customer aside for 1.5 seconds that allows staff to be able to say oh, I didn't actually think that these particular things would match to that, right? And it's been a really interesting tool for us to use with staff around training to help them better help customers, right?
Thematically, I think that's a critical important that I want to pull out a little bit more
It's
on.
interesting. Before you do that, though, I want to go one step further. I think taking 10 steps backwards, as we've been on this tech journey in our agency, which we've dropped, 250, 275 million post-pandemic in technology in the agency, right? I'm going to get rid of paper by the time I leave the agency if it kills me. Might kill me.
I'll stop printing things then.
Right, exactly. But one of the barriers that we had was just knowledge and what does bringing AI into the agency mean? What does bringing AI into the state mean? And just to talk about it briefly for the agency, right? We've had this deployed for a while, and senior and executive staff didn't really know about it, right? They do know about it, right? But the tactile experience of what it is. So we brought in our executive staff, which is 8 or 9 people, depending on the day. And we got their resumes and put them in the system and did a whole meeting with them to walk through what this experience is. Because it's one thing to kind of talk about it, right? But it's another thing to use them as the experience. And it was I don't actually think we debriefed after we did this, but it was just a really interesting, the different varying degrees of people who are developed professionals, right? Who have seasoned governmental experience, right? Who lead large teams of people, to have them talk about their experience and see the technology that we're using to help customers, right? I think it really was just an interesting turn in the agency for them to understand exactly what it is that we're offering to customers and how important we think it is that we're doing this sort of work on the level that we're doing.
Absolutely. We part of your mandate is obviously making sure that people have jobs. The other part is making sure that they have the right skills for the jobs of the future. Oftentimes how that was approached was, well, tell me what it is that you want to do. And by presenting all options, you don't present any really great options.
Yeah.
But now with artificial intelligence, when we were talking a little bit about skills, now you have insight into the skills that those individuals have, and you can compare those to the skills of future jobs, jobs where they want to move, right? So then it becomes more of a choose your own adventure on enabling that. How is that impacting ensuring that the citizens of New York are upskilled or reskilled for those right opportunities that are coming into the state?
Chris has the best answer to this.
He
does. I'm not bullshitting.
You remind me what my answer is for that. No. I think for a lot of folks, they definitely don't see their skills in themselves. And I have a lot of examples of what this is. It's the stay-at-home mom, right, who comes in, oh, I don't have any skills. No, you have probably more skills than most people because like
Absolutely.
you scheduled, you were also a doctor, you were all right, like all of these things that people can't see in themselves. The same goes for jobs, right? I hear it all the time. During the pandemic, hospitality shut down in so many places. Manufacturing had the opposite effect. So we went to the manufacturing industry and they're like, oh, we can't find any workers. Like, well, I have a boatload of workers for you. And they're like, why would we ever hire waiters and chefs? Like, well, one, they have more problem solving skills than most of your staff. They're adaptable, they have customer service, right? Like, that's easy for me to like rattle off, but how do I then, again, at scale, help people see that in themselves, that they have those kind of skills? And I think AI is not just an answer, it is the only answer. Because your entire career, and I go out and I talk to kids in middle school and high school a lot, because they're at the beginning phase. They're at the beginning phase of what skill building looks like. And I think we're really bad at talking about that. We talk about like, what do you want to be when you grow up, which is like the stupidest thing ever. But it's like what skills do you want to build? Like what atmosphere do you like to work in? Like that sort of thing. But like it's all about building skills and we don't talk about it that way. You're gonna have a bunch of jobs and you're gonna have like a bunch of opportunities and do stuff and volunteer, whatever all that stuff is, but you build skills doing it. But if we don't have tools that allow for that, account for that, help quantify and qualify those things, then we're really doing people a disservice. AI is the answer to that, truly.
What I spend most of my day doing in the office is what I'm about to do right now, which is I'm very disappointed in you. You missed something, which is in our just one, maybe two. Is that also in the space today is the green economy and new jobs that we have in the state is tremendous, right? And transitioning people out of the fossil environment into the new green economy is huge for us, right? So being able to help people understand what their transferable skill is and what the work that they're doing today and how that ports over to what's going to be done, right? There's a lot of drama, geschrei, craziness around like the world's coming to an end. It's not, right? As Chris will remind me all the time, what do you say, the ice cutters and the whatever?
Oh yeah, it's the jobs that are, so yesterday we took we won't say the word, we took a driverless taxi.
Insane.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Insane.
It was an experience.
But you're here today. You
But
made
here
it.
today,
made it
totally
here
here
today.
today. We thought we'd be the
So
fourth accident.
because we help people get jobs, right? We're both sitting there like, what's going to happen to the workers? And so I have this go-to line of all these other industries that don't exist. So like, who's collecting leeches? Who's lighting lamps? Who's setting up bowling pins? Who's the phone operator, right? Like all of these industries have gone away and we're not losing sleep over it. Right. Yes, it evolves over time, but the same thing is going to happen. Do I still need thousands of CDL drivers in New York? Yes. Is that going to change tomorrow? No. Will it change within the next decade? I'm not there yet. Because 5 years ago, I was like, no one needs to be a driver these days. And now it's like the #1 job in New York State that's needed. So I'm not there, but like evolution is evolution and like it impacts jobs. Just like the cell phone did, just like a computer did. Like this is just part of our like broader evolution and it's okay.
I want to talk about that a little bit more because we're just probably our last question. I know we could talk for hours on this topic.
I can't.
No, yeah, okay, fair. Well, we'll make sure that you have an opportunity to respond on this
That's
one.
too bad.
So a little bit on this, as jobs are changing, as industries are changing, right, and as the state of New York that's attracting new businesses to the state, making sure that you have workers. How is ensuring that you have the right labor that's upskilled really aligning to the economic development initiatives of the governor? Because a big part of the other side of that job network, right, is yes, we have people that are looking for jobs, but we also have employers that need those individuals. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Chris, can you talk a little bit about
The #1 thing, so we survey lots of job seekers and
Gave you a
survey lots of
chance.
business.
Yeah, you did.
By the thousands. And we hear very nuanced answers to questions because we have to know things, right, in order to like shape our programs, which doesn't seem like a government thing, but it is. It's how we do business. Number one thing that businesses are concerned about right now is the quality of job candidates, the quality of the workforce. This is not shocking, right? But it is very much reality. If I can turn to them and say, here are X number of people with Y skills, that is going to be, right, a very progressive approach. Instead of just throwing tax incentives at people, I can say, oh, I have actual people who are skilled and trained. Or, probably even more powerful, I have skilled people with X capacity to learn Y thing
skill.
that your business actually needs, not just for today, but for the next 3-5 year window. That is a huge, I think, change in how we're attracting and sustaining businesses in the state.
That was totally my answer.
That was it.
Yeah.
Surely you have
My
something.
job
now.
every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it is that being able to sell, right, job seekers into business has been something that's also just been critical, because it is, besides the where do I find the workers, is just being able to say this is what it is very concretely.
Yeah, absolutely. Because especially we see a lot of chip fabrication plants coming into the U.S., right? And a lot of the states are offering similar economic incentives to come
Yeah.
to the state, but
Ours are better, but
yeah, of course. But you're now also able to show, here's the present state of work, here's what we can develop in short order. So you're giving them now more of a quantitative and qualitative data set to
Very
make those
much so.
decisions and bring them in.
Very much so. In the last 3 chip fabs that we brought to the state, it was very much specifically because of that, to be able to demonstrate what the workforce was that we have and the skills that we have in the state to do the work.
That's fantastic.
Not to brag for Scott, but he was literally at the table for the, $10 billion.
It was fantastic. Yeah, it was exciting.
He helped negotiate.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this has been
That's why we're the best.
absolutely. Well, this has been a great conversation. Thank you
you.
so much for your time. Thank you
Thank
for your
you, thank you.
partnership,
Thank
and thanks
you.
for being here
you.
today.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Now, we do have a minute or so left. I don't know if we want to open it up for a question or two. Anyone have questions that they want to just ask? Oh, there we go. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That was great. We're involved with a project in Puerto Rico, and they're maybe a little bit behind you guys, right? What initiatives did you take or actions to gather adoption, right? From the job seekers
Yep.
and from the employers, right? Which is small and medium businesses are usually the ones that need the support more than anything, right? What kind of things did you do? Because we're looking at that now, right?
Yeah.
Getting massive adoption.
So for the job seeker side, I'm not leading with artificial intelligence because I think it scares people. I think we talk about the power. Depending on the person, you can kind of lean in on that. But if I think you say ooh, upload your resume, AI, people get freaked out, especially because it's government, right? For the business side, the opposite is true. I'm saying AI, list your jobs and we're gonna float all these people that we have in our system to help you. But I think for the job seeker, it's a really powerful system with and I'll throw algorithms and we have a lot of marketing like that. But I think people, once they see it, so we've done videos
That is
Yeah.
the actual proof is in the pudding, right? And the adoption for us has been around delivering the product.
Yeah. They don't believe it.
No,
I'm
they
not
really
kidding.
don't.
They literally
They
don't.
literally don't believe it. Yeah.
Can I do a follow-up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you using the job centers, the WIOA centers at all?
Yeah.
Or is it just marketing to, billboards, web, radio?
All of the above. All of the above. I think the biggest thing is we're inviting people by the thousands, right, as they come into our systems at all. Our biggest champions, though, are those career counselors who are working one-on-one in the WIOA centers, because they're sitting there and they're almost saying, go on, create your profile, update your resume as part of for government people, the RICIA appointments that we're doing. As part of those appointments, we're getting people into the Eightfold system, kind of as just one more step in the process, and it's very helpful.
Great.
All right. Final round of applause. Thank you all so much.